this. I'm gonna wait for people to join in. Hello Chaitanya. Terrible tea, man. Alright, so hello awesome artist. Sanjana Shekhar, hello. The Dusk Writer, hello. Hello everyone. How many have joined? 18, 19 people. Hello Meri Jaan. Krishna 911. Alright. Abhilash Panwar. I'm gonna start taking questions already because we'll be on a time limit of sorts. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. 6:30. We started at 7. I will end very diligently. So you can start asking your questions already, and we'll answer them one by one as I have my evening tea. Please shed some light on how to improve your English communication skills. Well, the Dusk Writer, that is something that I'm asked very often, and there's no clear-cut answer to that because I don't remember ever sitting down and ever learning English or something like that. It's something you develop with time. It's a collection of everything that you've read and every movie that you've seen, all the dialogues that you've heard, all the books that you've read, all the manuscripts that you've read, all the communication that you had with some other person. It's a collection of all of that combined into one quality. Nothing that you really sit down and read about, nothing you really sit down or assimilate in terms of knowledge. It happens over time. You have to commit to it in the sense that you have to start watching English cinema. You have to read good books. If you're going to read Chetan Bhagat and books like that, it's terrible. You guys can hear me, right? The T is in, often is silent. Okay, Fluke Skywalker, thank you very much. Thank you, I guess. So, you guys have to really sit down and participate in some form of good literature that you have to start committing yourself to. I would honestly suggest something like classical literature, because that's something I really give credit to in terms of vocabulary. English is predominantly vocabulary. Half of it is, of course, body language and the way you say it, your intonation. The rest is your vocabulary. As long as you sound really good in what you say, it doesn't really matter what you say, to be honest. That's one of the tricks that no one is ever going to teach you, but that's how it is. As long as you say something with a flair, it doesn't really matter what you say. You could really be saying something like, why don't you go and eat your defecation? And people are going to be very happy with that as well. Alright, I have some other questions that I missed while the question was going up. What kind of tea is that? Shaurya, it's normal tea, chai hai, ghar ki chai. It's just normal tea, man. Doodh or thoda sa adrak vagera. It's normal tea, man. Abhilash Panwar is saying not much audible. I hope that's only there for him and everyone else can hear me loud and clear. Okay, the questions. Why do you smoke weed? Well, you see, not something that I am particularly fond of addressing, and not something I really participate in very often as well. So, yes and no. It's not something I do ever so often. It's not something like a weekly thing or even a monthly thing, really. Maybe once a year, sometimes, you're hanging out with friends, a kind of circle that really enjoys that kind of substance, then I don't really mind that. The thing with that is, though, of course, if your company is good and if you can use that experience of the mental state that substance really puts you, you can use that mental state to effectively communicate with each other in some deeper facet of philosophy or reality or even meditation, mysticism, anything really, anything out of the ordinary. That substance is very good for that. It's also very good for artistic endeavors. But no, I'm not a regular participant of it. I don't use it very often. Saurav is asking, you were talking about mysticism in your status. Yes, the tragic suicide of Sushant Singh Rajput. Very tragic indeed. You see, if you remember, almost 2 years ago, there was a case in Burari in Delhi where an entire family hung themselves in their house. Now they were part of a cult, obviously, and they thought that doing this will help them ascend and transmute their physical self to a higher state of being. Now, contrary to what a lot of people believe, death cults are not uniquely Indian and are not even uniquely modern phenomena. They have always existed. You go to Heaven's Gate, that has always existed. There were Greek Eleusinian mysteries where suicide cults were also formed amongst the many things that they used to do. Among them were also orgies. But death cults have always existed and they will always exist. The Aztecs were also known to have some form of a death cult. Of course, it was ritual sacrifice, but inherently it's a death cult, really. To appease higher deities or to transcend the mortal self. These are two reasons, two streams of thoughts that are dominant in some form of mysticism. Not all of them, of course. Some schools of thought, some forms of mysticism do practice that kind of concept. Also, it's always a problem when you are listening to godmen. For example, the Ram Rahim thing that happened where he ordered people to castricize the what was it? Fuck it, I forgot the word. Was it? Well, they snipped their fucking balls. Yeah, fucking I forgot. Where they snipped their fucking balls. Some sort of godmen often do that, where they can force people to really lose themselves in what they believe, in any form of existential idea. If a person already has an existential crisis and you follow some sort of a godman who tells you that, well, if you end your life, you might just transcend to some other form, it's very easy for a person to do that then. So I don't know, maybe he was part of a cult, maybe he wasn't. Something points to that, especially when, his secretary committed suicide last week. So there's definitely something that is going on under the realms of what is shown to us on TV. There's definitely something behind that. I don't know if they were part of a cult or not, but if you look at his status, if you look at his posts generally, they have a certain sense of course, a lot of mysticism, a lot of Vedic stuff, but a lot of alternative science as well, if you look at his stuff. So very fascinating, the overlaps between that. So he was definitely experimenting with some meditation or some ideology that he wanted people to know, but very subtly, and that's why he always posted about these things. Very subtly he tried to make people aware that he was definitely a part of some school of thought. I wouldn't say a cult, maybe it's a little too harsh to say right now, but he was definitely a part of a school of thought that might have believe in the idea that maybe the cessation of physical existence might transform him into some, give him some insight into an ethereal existence. So that's very much a possibility. As I said, there are a lot of schools of thoughts behind it. For example, one of the mainstream ones is Christianity and Islam and Judaism. Abrahamic religions generally have a particularly death cult-like ideology. I don't mean that in the terms that the religious extremism. I'm not talking about that, but inherently the scriptures talk about how this reality doesn't really matter, and inherently we just have to go to the next one. So it's not a dominant trait only with cults. It's dominant with a lot of mainstream religions as well. The discontentment with this reality, with material reality, and wanting to transcend and go beyond. So I don't know what he was following, as I said, but I would be inclined to believe that he was definitely a part of some form of fringe ideology which might have prompted him to take his life. Okay. Sunny Kumar is asking, what are your thoughts on Jordan Peterson's son? Well, he has been a significant figure in a lot of political culture, especially in terms of free speech. So I very much his use of analogies is very good. His admittance for his own psychological issues is also something that's commendable, because a lot of people would not even admit to their own psychological issues, let alone ever to give advice without having to go through it yourself. I think is one of the silliest thing you can do. Don't expect a person who's never seen someone who's committed suicide or not battled ideas of suicide himself to give advice to someone who wants to commit it. Do you understand what I mean? You lead by example. So Jordan Peterson is a perfect person for that. He leads by example. He has his own psychological issues that he's battling right now, and for him to still find it in him to help people and guide them in some sense of responsibility or some sense of self-improvement is, I think, commendable. So that way, I think he's a commendable person. I particularly like the way he uses a lot of Christian analogies to talk about archetypes. That's also something I'm very fond of, because I like doing that every now and then myself as well. Okay, hello, hi. Have you seen the artworks I made for you? Yes, awesome artist. I've seen the artworks that you made for me. Perhaps tomorrow or day after, I shall put it in my story. Can you recommend some good philosophical book? Western philosophy. Oh, it's difficult in terms of Western philosophy. See, there are a lot of modern philosophical thoughts that schools of thoughts that I would recommend. But see, I have grown wary of most of them. Perhaps what I would like for a person to experiment with is some form of Gnosticism or some form of Hermeticism, because these are borderline philosophical and borderline occult as well. And I think the mix and match between the two very different streams of thought is particularly fascinating for a lot of people. So that's what I would suggest, Hermeticism and Gnosticism. Either of them. Good books by them. Well, Hermeticism, I would recommend the Order of Golden Dawn, anything published by them, because it borderlines some form of high occult traditions and, of course, a lot of Greco-Egyptian philosophy. So you might like any book by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Krishna is asking, how often do you smoke? Not very often, once a year, if that makes sense, once a year. So yeah. Got the answer, brother. Thanks and more power to you. Thank you, Dusk Writer. Geez, I don't even remember when was the last time I read a book. Horia Chow. Neither do I, really. I have a lot of books lying around, but for the past 1 year or so, I have found committing to books to be something that is very soon going to become a very archaic concept. So I'm listening to a lot of audiobooks these days myself. Saves a lot of time. I can do a lot of things while I'm listening to them. That's that. Of course, I'm still trying. I still manage about 10 to 15 pages in a day, which is an alright speed for me these days. Earlier, I used to read 5 books simultaneously in 1 month. So that was that. In the recent few years, though, I've really let that habit go. I don't know. Even I'm too distracted by social media and things like that, sharing memes and ridiculous things like that. Yeah, triggering people. That's another thing. Triggering. What the fuck was I saying? I love the podcast. Thank you, brother. Thank you. I loved making it as well, and I hope you guys, get something out of it, something that's substantial and something that's useful. Do you think Indian English-speaking YouTubers have any chance in India? Well, not a very big market for them, really. But you know why I stick to this? Of course, there are a few videos that I put out that are in Hindi. For example, the Sadhu interview and things like that. I continue doing this in English because I don't want to limit myself to Indian audience, and also it is easy to weed out people who are not willing to make the effort to go beyond the linguistic capabilities to understand the concepts that you're speaking of, if that makes sense. So anyone who's willing to sit down and speak to the ramblings of a madman has some sort of discipline in their life. And I would be very happy that that's the kind of people that I'm attracting on my channel. Alright, movies, TV shows can do the trick too. Yes, of course, a lot of... Are we talking about English? Fluke, Skywalker, sorry. I pronounced it right the first time. I don't know why I messed it up this time. Yes, a lot of movies and TV shows can do the trick too. A lot of BBC TV series and things like that, something I'm particularly fond of. So yeah, you can do that, absolutely. Alright. How the ginger beer turned out? Well, it wasn't as carbonated as I expected it to be, and it didn't give me a good hit as well. So I'm not overly happy with how it turned out. These days I'm growing oyster mushrooms though. So I should have a good flush by the end of the month. And I'll tell you how I managed to grow them and how they turned out, and some recipe as well, because I really like cooking these days. Well, I've liked cooking for a few years actually. Cosmic Pilgrim says I was also kept in an incubator. Well, that's why you're special, and so am I. Alright, so am I. We're special. Ruchika says, good to see you. Good to see you as well, love. Good to see you as well after a very, very long time. Hashim is asking, what's up, bro, man? It's all good. Spending their time indoors, spending a lot of time in meditation, spending a lot of time in a lot of ebooks that I am reading simultaneously. I'm listening to a lot of audiobooks as well these days. Recently I got interested in certain concepts of hypnosis and things like clinical hypnosis and things like that. So I'm reading a lot of books on that. I mean, listening to a lot of books on that. So very fascinating. That's actually where I got the whole insight into the different kinds of learners, because inherently what a hypnotherapist does is he deduces your personality type to one of those three personalities, and then he uses visual or auditory input to influence the way you feel. So yeah, very, very fascinating indeed these days. I'm really into that. Cosmic Pilgrim is saying, I could relate with your story. Thank you, brother. Thank you. That means a lot, to find familiarity in weakness, especially in childhood weakness, I guess. Yes, I did speak about Sushant Rajput. I just did. I think this story is going to be saved, and then you can listen to that. But inherently the point is that there have been similar instances like that. For example, one in Delhi a few years ago, where the entire family hung themselves in their house because they were part of a death cult. I don't know if he was a part of death cult or not, but there are certain things that point to that. For example, his secretary committing suicide about a week ago, and now him. So there is definitely some form of underlying cause that you can't really label on something like depression. And that's another thing I absolutely detest. See, depression is just one of the symptoms of a deeper problem. One of the deeper problem, or if you really want to call it a problem, that's totally up to you, is existentialism. And existentialism is a question that we all battle. We will all battle throughout our lives, and some of us will find some sort of breakthrough in that, and most of us will not find any breakthrough in that, and the ones that don't find any breakthrough in that will ideally end their life. So they might be depressed, but the cause of that depression is existentialism for a lot of people. And the problem with existentialism is that it generally plagues a lot of people who are into the creative arts, because you require a certain awareness of yourself. You also require a certain divorced aspect from yourself. Everyone from an artist to a painter to a musician to an actor generally play parts in small pieces. So an artist plays the part of a let's say someone who's drawing, he's playing the part of something that is being created. So he's literally manifesting life, or imbibing some sort of life into this 2D figure. So he's inherently acting like this creation god of sorts, creating something out of thin air, or at least out of their mind. So there's this inherent quality of detachment that happens when you are of a particular artistic bent of mind. With actors, it's more predominant as well, and with musicians as well, because they have to, for a little time, forego their identity altogether and take on the identity of someone else. An actor generally, spends too much time in someone else's skin, so it's very much to become dissociated from your own real self becomes very easy for artists, because they spend so much extended time trying to imbibe someone else's everything from body movement to the way they think and things like that. So on a very metaphysical level, it's very easy to get divorced from reality and very easily lose track of things. So yeah, but I think that's one of the curses of creativity. If you are of creative bent of mind, that is just something you have to learn to live with, and a lot of ways that you can handle it. Obviously, one of them is meditation. Then things I keep talking about, psychedelics and other forms of attaining altered consciousness, where for once, if you feel the expansion of yourself, after that, the question does not bother you as much whether you are real or not. That kind of depersonalization, that kind of detachment, that kind of existential dread of whether anything is real or if nothing is, or if any of this has any meaning or it does not. Once you get an experience of the expansion, it becomes easier to tackle these questions, or at the very least bear them till your physical cessation of life. So I spoke about Sushant Singh Rajput again. So what is this? Someone is sending something. Request. Krishna is requesting. What is Krishna requesting? To go live with me? नहीं यार आज नहीं, लंबा हो जाएगा बहुत ज़्यादा. 6:50 already. I would really like to end it at 7. Would you like to make a documentary down the line? Yes, I have had that in mind for a very long time, actually, to make a documentary. My father was a documentary filmmaker for a very long time, so it's something that is inherent in me, something that's in my blood, I guess. I would really like to do that, perhaps about the different streams of philosophy that exist in the Indian subcontinent, something that I would really want to experiment with, because when people think about sadhus and things like that, they generally think about only one particular kind of renunciant, someone who wears saffron clothes and walks around with an outgrown beard and dreadlocks and things like that. But there are so many different streams of that kind of ascetic lifestyle. There are Naga sadhus and Aghoris and just generic sadhus and tantrics who are also somewhat sadhus. I mean, some of them they're just following a tradition of tantra. So a lot of different kinds of sadhus and things like that. That's something I really want to talk about. I think there is a sort of revival that's also happening these days with a lot of people. I would count myself amongst them as well. There's a certain revival of the shamanistic, of the sadhu, of the thing I spoke about, the whole primal creature who is trying to understand existence from a very kinesthetic perspective. So I think that kind of revival is also happening, and in that aspect I would consider myself and people like me as well somewhat ascetic in nature. So yeah, I'm sorry if I'm speaking too fast. Generally when I have racing thoughts, that's what I tend to do. Please share your take on existentialism. Well, let me just have a sip, Yeah. Well, with existentialism, as someone who's battled it myself, as everyone does, especially in their teens, late teens, and early 20s, everyone is going to battle that existential dread. I think the reason you battle that is because modern lifestyle is too materialistic. What I mean by that is not that it's money oriented. What I mean by that is that it confines existence to a state of matter, to a state of, this matter, to physical matter. And because it confines it to that, and it offers answers only in the notion of dogmatic science, where this is it. This is the only way to understand reality. You have to look at it under a microscope. You have to study it outside. You have to observe it in a controlled environment. That kind of linear, controlled understanding, almost dogmatic in the sense, has also rendered people unhappy, and that's why one of the reasons existentialism or depression is at an all-time high, because people see themselves as only flesh bags when we are much, much more than that. This is the only time in history, of course, where materialism has been the dominant narrative. Every culture that has ever existed throughout human history has always spoken about metaphysical things. It's only now that the mere mention of these things renders you some sort of a loon, some sort of a conspiracy theorist, or some sort of an idiot, and you have to fall into some level of Dawkins kind of a dogmatic atheism, where it doesn't matter what someone else believes in. You have to tell them, no, you're wrong. No, listen to me, you're wrong. That kind of idiocy is only something that generally was confined to people who were extremists in terms of religion. But now that kind of extremism has sort of overtaken science, at least mainstream science. And when I say mainstream science, I don't mean that there are substreams of lesser sciences, of alternative sciences, because most of them are, of course, superstitious nonsense. But there is a lot of merit to a lot of different ones. For example, yoga. It is a technology of sorts. It is a way of killing a lot of material desires and ascending far beyond the capabilities that your mind can confine your consciousness with. So to feel that kind of expansion, to feel that you're greater than this flesh bag, is one of the ways that yoga helps with. And in clinical studies, in controlled studies, there are things that people who practice yoga can do that are not possible by most mainstream narratives of science. For example, this genetic freak, Wim Hof, fascinating fellow, the Iceman. He climbed half of the Mount Everest or something in his underpants. That requires some form of, there is something definitely that he's doing right. To say that he's some sort of mind over matter genetic freak would be silly, because he's teaching other people as well. And other people are replicating the same thing. So there is definitely something that's going on over there. There are yogis that sit near Gangotri and on glaciers who bear sub-zero temperatures, which should ideally not be possible. how far can you take mind over matter as a narrative? How far can you take it, really? To say that everything that is abnormal to the way we generally work, to anything that is abnormal from a person who is on his cell phone, or just walking to office, or wearing a tie or a suit or something like that, anything out of that to be abnormal or to be considered eccentric or strange, is also one of the reasons why dogmatic science has failed us, because it narrows down your existence to a very commercial and a very materialist identity. And that's also one of the reasons why people as young as 8 years old and 9 years old have less developed brains, and are generally considered extremely physically weak. Experience any form of higher consciousness even as a child. I mean, if you were a child, you would remember that we all had very strange lucid dream experiences and things like that. As children, it's very common. But children nowadays don't even bother about these fantastical things. Imagination is something that has died in most modern children. Anyway, I'm rambling now. I guess I answered most of the question. I lose track after a point of time when I get a little too interested in the topics I'm talking to. How is existentialism related to suicide? Well, it's an answer out of the entire charade. It's easy to think that the cessation of life might plunge you into some greater reality. What is existential? Existentialism is why are we here? Where do we come from? All those questions, where are we going, and things like that. Things that generally can only be answered according to most philosophies, most religions, most spirituality. That question can only be answered once you die. To know what's on the other side. Some people just find it easier to hasten the process and not spend this entire lifetime pondering over the question and get right to the answer. So, which series you're watching? Well, these days I'm really I finished the Midnight Gospel a few weeks ago, and after that I watched Dark, and now I'm watching Hilda. I like it. It's a very nice, very a little absurd but very endearing sort of an animation format. I love the animation style, the colors that's used in that. Yes, ostracize, castrate, yes, Vihandir, thank you, castrate, yes. I'm still scrolling down, see how I can get carried away. Notice my question, brother. What was the question, Sunny? I haven't seen it, I hope I answered. Have you read Man's Search for Meaning? Which one is this, Shaurya? Man the Unknown? I don't know, Man's Search for Meaning, I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. Thank you for doing this. You yourself told me that you're an astral projector. Talk about it. Well, you see, the thing with astral projection and things like that, which is something I'll talk about in a podcast, which should be a little more detailed. I don't have a lot of time right now. 1 minute, I'll exceed it maybe by 3 minutes at max, but I'll give you an idea of what astral projections and telekinesis and all these special powers that a lot of people really like talking about. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people actually get into yoga, meditation and things like that, to experience this kind of superhuman concept, some sort of superhuman ability. Give me 1 second. Alright. Siddhis, powers, telekinetic powers, ESP, all of that, para-human powers of sorts. What I think, from what I understand with my experiences, what I think that they are, is that when you transcend materialism as base reality, or when you experience other realities other than materialism, whatever state of existence you go in that is beyond materialism, things that are normal over there, for example, walking or talking or things like that, things that are normal over there manifest themselves in this reality as something that might be considered supernatural, if you understand what I mean. To go too deep within your mind and to access these realms of consciousness, you can bring back abilities from there that manifest themselves as almost supernatural in this reality, but in that reality they're as normal as as walking or talking. For example, the Wim Hof guy, because he's the best studied guy. Just give me 1 second, I'll just show you something. This book that everyone must get. Everyone. I highly recommend this book to everyone. It's called Supernormal by Dean Radin. One of the best researches done on paranormal abilities is by this guy, under controlled studies, under scientific studies for extended periods of time. And he deduces that there are states of mind that you can access where you can control things like the sympathetic nervous system, where you can elicit muscle hypertrophy without lifting weights and things like that. I would definitely recommend that you read this book. Astral projection seems to be one of the extensions of that as well. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's really not going out of your body. Maybe it's simply to replicate some sort of mimicry of real life, or some sort of physical real life in your mind, but with the abilities of a dreamlike state. Maybe it's that. Inherently, the question falls down to what you want to believe in. I believe that it is possible to extend the reaches of your consciousness beyond your physical form. You want to believe that it's a dream state, that's also perfectly fine. In either case, I would really recommend this book to people if they want to experiment with these subjects and go into much more detail than this. Another book that I would recommend is anything by Rupert Sheldrake, who also talks a little bit about how science has become very dogmatic. So yeah. Okay. Just one more question and then we will be ending this. Okay. Man, you seem to be... Radha Mishra asked me your views on eternal reoccurrence. It'll take a lot of time. I will address it the next time, pakka. Next Sunday, pakka, I will address this one. Anindo asked me a little easier question, which is sort of something I can address quickly. Man, you seem like a smart guy. Would love to know your religious beliefs. Well, eclectic. I guess I would be considered eclectic. I take a lot from different streams of thoughts and I combine them together to use what works for me. In the occult tradition, you would call it something like chaos magic. I just call it eclectic. Something that I take a lot of streams from different religions and I work my way around what works for me and what does not work for me. Let's say 80% is generally Vedic, these days at least, and the rest is some Judeo-Christian influences, because that's what I was raised in as a child. Some Zoroastrianism as well, because the element of fire and things like that is something I find really fascinating in terms of the mythos if you really read about Zoroastrianism. And a lot is, of course, Western occultism. So yeah. Okay, just one more question and then I'll end it. Do you think there's a greater plan to the course of... Okay, Punkster is asking, do you think there's a greater plan to the course of life, or are we creating life as it happens? Are we living in someone's dream as defined by Hermeticism? See, what I find particularly fascinating about this idea of Hermeticism is that it falls in line with the simulation paradox, that we are simply simulations living in a simulation. A lot of people don't really want to think too deeply about it, because that's a very scary idea, to think that, alright, no, nothing is real, everything is a simulation, but then so am I. By extension, I am also a simulation. That is a terrifying idea for a lot of people, but that's inherently what Hermeticism is talking about, the fact that we might be living in someone else's dream. In terms of greater plan, I think but it's difficult to say at this moment. Maybe a few years down the line, I could perhaps answer this better if I understand what the plan is. But since my teens till now, I have changed so radically that I don't know. This is just a rabbit hole in itself. To get into that is just too contradictory, to be honest, and not something I am clear about myself as well. There are a lot of synchronicities that happen though, that make me believe that there might be some form of structure to it all, that maybe not everything is as chaotic as it seems, yet at the same time the equal amount of your life is just random acts without any purpose. So maybe it is all chaos. It's a very strange conundrum to bother much about. So yeah, that's where I'll leave it. Alright, we shall end today's session. I hope you guys enjoy it. I will just read through whatever people have asked, and I will not answer anything anymore. This is the end of the session. I had my tea, and I had cold tea because of people, because you kept bombarding me with so many questions. Well, I'm still going to read through most of them, and I'll answer them the next time. How would you recommend a friend to tackle existentialism? I'll answer that the next time. When you speak about fringe ideology, could this induce due to medication one is taking? Yes, I'll answer that the next time. Keep your questions ready the next time. The same questions ready the next time. Bro, have you seen the artworks I emailed you? बोला तो मैंने तेरे को, अभी मैं डालूंगा परसों नरसों इस पे स्टोरी पे. Opinion on Zizek. Okay. Do you know the philosopher called J. Krishnamurti? Yes, the Theosophy Society. I was a part of Theosophy Society for a little while, by the way. I fucking hated it. Krishnamurti was an influential figure. He is also borderline materialist in a lot of things that he says, but a lot of what he says is also transcendental. A lot of his experiences, I think, were shaped because Helena Blavatsky was an asshole. I know it's going to ruffle a lot of feathers, but I think that she was. Okay, that's what I think. I think she was a crazy woman who believed in all sorts of loony things as well. And that's also one of the reasons why the Theosophy Society never really achieved the heights that it could have achieved. Okay, your views on Sadhguru. Okay, next time definitely. I smoke mint leaves. Is it normal? Can I suggest some smoke? I don't know, man. Smoking mint leaves sounds a little dangerous. Maybe I heard some theory when I was young that it can shrink your balls, so you don't want to do that. What do you mean astral projector? ठीक है, वही question थे. Alien abduction. Shit, man. Fuck. You should have asked me this before. Fucked attention spans. Okay. Thrill of the chase a real thing? Yes, Sarvesh Vashish. Thrill of the chase is a real thing if you are of a particular sense of mind. For a lot of people, getting things in their lap seems to be the thing, the way they go about life these days. Tinder and all these things, there's no chase involved. If we are talking about the same thing, I hope we are. I don't want to embarrass myself. Okay, what podcast are you listening to? Share something good that you listened to in the past. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I'll talk about it the next time. I showed you my stuffs to my pal. I showed your stuffs to my pal in the Netherlands. Shaurya says, oh, thank you very much, Shaurya. Thank you very much. If they're in the Netherlands, tell them to send me some magic mushrooms. Do you watch anime? Yes, I do. Talk to me about suicides and the realm. I will talk about it the next time, Ritika. Do you think about biological sex as a spectrum? No, I don't. Biological sex is not a spectrum. Shout out. Gender identity, maybe spectrum. That's again something I don't really like to get into too much. Something that doesn't appeal to me. I find it to be a dull and lifeless topic. Shout out to the Incubator Boys. Hell yeah! What do you say about people having suicidal thoughts? I'll talk about it the next time. So many fucking questions. Fucking hell. I keep scrolling and they keep appearing. I will talk about it all the next time. I shall take your leave now. You take care. Every Sunday, remember, 6:30 every Sunday. Perhaps next Sunday we will increase it to 1 hour. Because that will make it slightly more easier to address more questions. Half an hour seems to be a little too short. Mainly because of me, because I ramble a lot. You guys generally asking good questions. So take care now. Bye-bye. I shall see you on the next Sunday. Bye-bye.